the back. The chair will now recognize the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been one of the more difficult hearings I have sat through, and it brings me back to some of the earlier hearings I heard from in this room, and my thoughts about the testimony that I would hear about those who perished in their attempt to get into America across the Arizona desert. And as I contemplated the banks of witnesses we heard testify to that human tragedy, it began to occur to me how many Americans died at the hands of those who did make it across the desert. And Bishop, sitting in your chair was a witness who's former INS named Mike Cutler. As I asked the witnesses that question, it came to him as the last of the four to answer the question, and he said, I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you it will be in multiples of the victims of September 11th. And that sparked something in me that brought about the request for what turned into 2 GAO studies. And to get apples to apples out of this federal government is a difficult thing to do. But we learned about the percentage of criminal aliens in our federal prisons, 27 to 28%, some numbers higher than that. We learned that Mike Cutler was right, that it is in the multiples of victims of September 11th. Here we're looking at the tragedy. The tragedy that we're hearing from 2 mothers here today that have the strongest heart to be able to testify to the worst agony that a person could go through in a lifetime. And when I see these stories, and I regret we have not yet met Ms. Root, that hit me very hard when it finally came to me. There in my backyard was another tragedy that I've been struggling here in this committee for years to try to prevent, right in the backyard. And you know that I've been across the river to help out in Omaha when we've had these kind of tragedies. And now I learned in your testimony that another one took place while you were here. And Laura, this is at least your second time to testify before the committee, and I know we did an event in Richmond, Virginia. I think that's where I first met you. The depth of your faith to go to jail and forgive the murderous perpetrator that killed your son, that's equivalent to the 9 families that stepped up to the pulpit in South Carolina and forgave the murderer there. It is, and when you said that God is the creator of boundaries, I don't know if anybody else in this room or panel knows what you're referring to, but I believe it was St. Paul's sermon on Mars Hill in Acts when he said, and God made all nations on earth, and he decided when and where each nation would be. That's some of the boundaries that you're talking about that God lays out for us, and we're obligated to follow them. I listened to the opening statement of the gentlelady from California when the first thing she did was to criticize our witness, Sheriff Jenkins, for profiling. I grew up in a law enforcement family. If you've got gray hair and you've enforced the law, you have profiled, and you, by golly, better profile. There are lives saved by profiling, legitimately, not discriminating against people, but being wise enough to know there are certain people you pay attention to and other people that you don't. And I'd put into the record, Sheriff Jenkins, you have likely saved many lives over your career because of good judgment. Included in that good judgment is profiling. Would that be correct?
I would say that's probably accurate, yes, sir.
And I would thank you. And then I'd turn to Ms. Root. And I want to, again, express the sympathies of this panel, but each of you here will know that it takes the President of the United States to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And when he tells us he doesn't have the authority to grant his administrative amnesty 22 times, and he sets forth and does it anyway, and now the Supreme Court is hearing the argument that somehow the President can create vast groups of people that include millions of people, and then grant them at least a temporary amnesty until we get a president who will take his oath of office. This heartache that we live under, this Congress hasn't had the will to shut off the funding to the president's golf cart or Air Force One in order to ensure that he enforce immigration laws. And I don't know that we can get this fixed in any time without a new president. But I just ask if there's anything left that you'd like to say into this record, Ms. Root. I'm so sympathetic to what you're able to do here, and let the record show that witness declined. And I'd move to Ms. Wilkerson, and I'd ask if you could add any more to your testimony here today.
Thank you. I just want to say that it's not about loving or unloving people. It's not about it at all. It's about following the laws. We have to have the boundaries. Everyone knows that's sitting here that if you don't have boundaries, it's chaos. You don't allow your children to run your household, or you'd have chaos. I don't understand why people can understand a country with no borders. It's not a country. We might as well call us the world. We're the world. Because it's, if we have no borders, we're not the United States of America. Who are we? We don't know. We really don't know.
And I thank you. Now, just to ask a very quick question from Sheriff Jenkins. 1,400 placed into removal proceedings in cooperation with ICE. How many were actually deported?
That, sir, I don't have the number. We never really know the number because it's on a case-by-case basis.
That's what I thought. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.